Let's go. Welcome back to the Inside Lines, where we talk about politics and news affecting the lives of New Jerseyans. We've got a lot of things to talk about today, but before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the tragic loss of Newark detective and police officer Joseph Ascona, who was killed recently in the line of duty. He was just 26 years old. Sergeant Detective Ascona made the ultimate sacrifice while protecting and serving the community. And our thoughts and prayers are with his family, his fellow officers, and loved ones. Look, law enforcement officers put their lives on the line every single day. I know this well because I serve in my community, and I hope that none of us take that for granted. Rest in peace, sir. You will be missed, and thank you for your service. You know, Oscar, tragic loss like this is a stark reminder of the dangers of law enforcement officers face every single day. You know, crime is growing in New Jersey. It was a 14-year-old who was involved in the shooting. We hear all these statistics about crime, but it's not just about statistics, man. It's like affecting real people, you know? I don't know if you saw on Facebook or on social media, but like the tremendous outpouring of people that went to the procession and the funeral was just amazing. It's really affected a lot of people. But, you know, the past few years where there was so much hate towards law enforcement officers and first responders. It's crazy how the media portrays all that against law enforcement, but when we experience a tragedy like this, where it hits home in New Jersey, Newark isn't that far from here. It's literally like 30 minutes away, not even 20, 30 minutes. Take a ride down the New Jersey Turnpike and we're there. It's just really sad and disheartening. And as someone who serves in my community, it's affected all of us. How do you feel about what's happened?
I mean, it's a tragedy, you know, and it was a totally preventable one. You know, again, the shooter was 14 years old. And at what age do we have to do an intervention to prevent things like this from happening? You know, you look at the crime rates in Newark, right? And under the leadership of their mayor, Ras Baraka, who is now running for governor. It's a tragic reminder of what happens under these kinds of like lax on crime policies. You know, what kind of early intervention, not only for the young man that shot the police officer, but what had to happen to prevent the illegal firearm from getting into his hands. You know, when you have a culture of leniency on crime, I mean, these crimes happen. And, you know, I'm sure you, in your experience, have seen that time and time again.
Well, look, I mean, you know, I'm from Paramus, so we're probably the mall capital of the world, or at least in New Jersey, in this metropolitan area. We experience, if you listen to the radio chatter, you know, and you get shoplifters every single day. You get crime that's going on in the malls. We get cars that are stolen from driveways. So these cars are going to Newark, you know, like it's like these young kids who don't have licenses even to drive. They're coming into homes, burglarizing homes, stealing cars. And our police are, you know, they chased to Newark before during COVID, like they weren't even allowed to chase. But I think now they do in some cases. And it continues. You don't see it going down. You just, every single week, there's continuation of these cases that are going on. There's no criminal penalty, right? If someone like a shoplifter is caught, they're held in a cell for 30 minutes or whatever, and then let go. They're never, Bergen County, the jails, right? They're all closing down. Passaic County, I think, closed all their jails, and they send all their people to Bergen County, and we get a fee for that, but then they're all released. It's just, what is going on with this state? This is not the state that I grew up in, and it's not the state that you grew up in. How are we to affect change with regards to these crime policies? Because right now it's not doing it. The current governor, the current AG, it's not doing it.
And I think it's a great point. When you have a soft on crime governor, a soft on crime attorney general, but also when you get down to local governance, county governance, it's big. If you can't address these policies at home at the local level, I mean, you have no hope of addressing them at the state level.
I feel like an excuse is made at the county level that because the county AGs get the directive from the state AG, right? What's his name? Plotkin or whatever, who's for some reason always now attacking Trump for some reason on social media, which is okay. Let's focus on New Jersey. They receive those directives, and then it's just an easy excuse saying like, hey, we have to follow what they're telling us to do. It seems like local police, local law enforcement have their hands tied behind their backs.
Absolutely. Look, and we've heard this, and I'm sure you've heard this as a law enforcement officer. We need to let cops do their job, right? And they can't do that if at the county level and at the state level, they're being told, no, you have to do this and you have to follow this policy by people, again, who have no experience with law enforcement, who have no experience with crime. I mean, these are Democratic politicians. They're down in the safe part of Trenton. They go to the Capitol and they go home.
Trenton's not that safe, by the way.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, Trenton as a whole isn't safe, or the Capitol building is. It's pretty safe.
100%, 1,000%. What is the thinking behind Democrats, though, with regards to why they implement these soft on crime policies? What's the thinking? What's the rationale?
I think, like many policies, it comes from a good place. They want to talk about rehabilitation, but the fact is they completely misunderstand the fundamental tenets of rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is not catch and release. It's not, here's a finger wag, don't do it again, we'll let you back on the street. If you don't address the fundamental issues behind crime, you're not going to be able to rehabilitate a criminal. And in the process, you've let these people, when you talk about something like cashless bail, people who commit offenses, property offenses or violent offenses, and you release them and they go out and then continue to do violent crime.
Some of them do it the same day. It's so ridiculous. And I'm surprised more people aren't furious about this. Maybe they will show how they feel this November with regards to who they vote for. But it's something that needs to be addressed this year. They're like soon, because this is really getting out of hand. And that's why it's one of the reasons why many people are leaving the state. We're leaving. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is how much they're being taxed. New Jersey, as you know, maybe you don't know, but your parents may know. I know because of the amount of taxes that we pay, tremendous amount in comparison to other states. I know people in Bergen County that are paying possibly close to $20,000 a year in property taxes. My brother-in-law, he has a big house. He pays like $40,000+ in property taxes. It's absurd. And that's why people are leaving. And now that we got the governor's budget, I don't know if you took a look at that. A couple weeks ago, the governor gave this budget address. And look, I'll give him credit. He's a great communicator. Like he can talk and speak, and he's got that experience behind him. But you know what? I know talk is cheap, and that's why I downloaded the budget. Okay. This is 100 pages, but hey, I printed on both sides, so I'm being environmentally friendly, okay? So you can't get me on that. But I was going through this budget, and the amount of money that's being spent, let's say before Murphy got into office, the budget was $34 billion. He's in his final year, and now the budget is $58 billion. So it's gone up, what, $24 billion? How is that possible, Oscar? How is this possible? And how is it that like people are not like furious about this? Because I certainly am.
Look, and I think it's ridiculous. The state has not gotten $24 billion better. I can tell you that for an absolute fact.
1,000%.
When you get down to it, it's just tax and spend, tax and spend. And you'll notice nowhere in the words tax and spend is improve, right? It's the Democrat policy. You tax more, you spend more. You throw money at a problem, and it doesn't get better. So what's your solution? It's very simple. You throw more money at the problem next cycle. And you raise taxes, and you are absolutely 100% right. College graduates are hemorrhaging from New Jersey. They're fleeing. And, looking at numbers like that, I don't know how much of them I can blame.
Look, when I drove here, the roads were pretty iffy. When I went to the grocery store, I'll tell you a story. I went to Costco, and a lot of you guys out there probably go to Costco because you can buy in bulk and save. I went to the business Costco, and because I go to the business Costco because there's less people, so it's easier to move in and out. And I went to the refrigerator section and to get eggs because, I have a young son. Eggs are good for you, protein, and they were not selling dozens, like a dozen eggs or like 18 eggs a carton. They were selling dozens. 15 dozen boxes of eggs for $120. They usually would sell like 18, like a big carton or something like that. So that's why I would go there and buy. But you can't buy it. They won't break it down. They'll just say buy the box, and it's like, huh? Now I have to go to the other Costco to see if there's eggs even there. But I go to like the local supermarket, and it's literally $10. And, the Dems are blaming Trump and everyone else because of these high egg prices. And I don't think that's fair. But yeah, it's just crazy how much we're being taxed.
Yeah. And you know what? I had an omelet for breakfast myself, and I almost said,
2, 3 eggs or 1 egg?
It's got to be 2 eggs usually. Today was
At
1
least.
egg, looking at the price. But the fact of the matter is, the number one reason for costs in New Jersey, every time you pay for a gallon of gas, 35 cents is the gas tax. So think about what you could do if your gas per gallon was 35 cents cheaper. Look, I drive an economy car. I'm taking 12, 13 gallons of fill up. And 35 cents. I mean, you're looking at
over time, and you drive to school,
absolutely,
right? So you're filling up at least once, maybe twice a week.
Yep, absolutely, once or twice a week, and you have to look. You can't tell people to drive less. People need to get to work. People need to get to school. People have families that they need to support. They need to go grocery shopping, drop kids off, whatever the case may be. And these are the policies that the gas tax, for example, that's what's going to flood this inflated budget.
Well, look, I want to talk about a couple things that I saw in the budget that were eye-opening to me, that it's just like, what is going on? And maybe we can have a little discussion. The first one was education. So they're allocated $1.3 billion for pre-K, and $12.1 billion for K through 12. And I don't know if you know what's going on in districts with regards to education. I'm sure you have a sense because you're a younger guy. You probably know some younger people who are still in high school. For me, I'm on the Board of Ed, so I see the data. COVID destroyed our students with regards to education. The data reflects that. Scores are down tremendously. And yet, the administration will come in and say, hey, we're doing well. We've improved. You've improved from 40% down, up 1 or 2%. Okay, wow, great job. Schools are failing. yet we're giving more and more money. And the reason why I got it, one of the reasons why I got into the Board of Ed was because I was not happy with what they were spending time on to the students. You know, for me, growing up in New Jersey, being part of the public education system for most of my school years, it was all about math, right? Math, reading, science, history, learning real topics that would help me grow into be a knowledgeable person. But they've spent all this money to weird things, indoctrinating kids. And indoctrinating is a word, oh, you shouldn't say that. But that's what's happening when you have all these political ideologies going into these schools, when you see all these weird flags and all these things that are being taught. And schools now are getting more money to do these types of things. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, George, I will tell you about the big lie of the New Jersey school system. You know, New Jersey, especially our governor, likes to tout that we have one of the best education systems in the country.
We don't.
Now, if you take out, I believe it is the top 10% of performing schools, we drop down to 36th to 37th on that list.
Right.
The fact of the matter is we have very, very high performing schools, and then we have the rest of the state.
Right.
And you know, states like New York, where we pay almost $1 billion, if not $1 billion in subsidies, education. And it's one of the worst schools in the state.
There
it's one of the
are
worst
students in Newark that can't even read. That can't even read at their level, grade level. I mean, look, we do have great Bergen County academies. Probably one of the best schools in the state or even in the nation. I think when you look at the rankings from U.S. News and World Report, what do they teach? What do they teach?
It's very simple. You stick to STEM, English, history, core subjects. Look, and I understand that a child needs to be developed well-rounded, but it's the parent's job to teach them things outside of what the school curriculum is meant to provide. You know, there are sensitive subjects, and I'm empathetic and I'm sympathetic to the fact that some things need to be taught, but they're not meant to be taught in schools without parents who are in charge of the emotional development of their child. Exactly.
And look, when you have first graders, second graders, third graders being taught these weird things, when you know, their brains aren't fully developed, right? I think studies have showed that even high school graduates' brains are still not developed, right? It goes into like maybe college years, if they go to college, or like early 20s when brains get developed. Is your brain developed? I just want, but no, your brain is very developed, by the way. But it's crazy why they're doing these types of things. And you see a great example of Bergen County academies and the technical schools doing well. Why are they doing well? Because they're teaching the math and the sciences and the things that kids need. And they're not like, you'd think that, hey, this is a great example, a great case study, that it's working really well for these students, yet students don't have access to these because it's like a competition to get into these schools. But why aren't we doing this at the local level in our public school system?
Look, I think every child has the right to a good, decent education. I think the problem that we're having is, and this is no fault on the educators, this is a problem with curriculum coming down from the state and funding coming down from the state. They're trying to turn schools into a second home, right? And that's simply not what schools were designed to be. The schools are designed to educate you. Your home is your home. Your family is your family, you know, and I have a lot of respect for teachers, but again, they're not your mother and father, your mother and father, your mother and father. And you're taking time away from things that students really need to be focusing on. You know, our science scores are low, our math scores are low, our English, like you were saying, you know, you have kids that aren't reading at grade level. You know, we have people graduating from high school completely functionally illiterate. And it's a sad state. You know, I'm lucky I had, I'm really grateful to have parents that raised me right, that encouraged me to pursue my education. I continue to do so. But the fact of the matter is, we need to be able to teach our kids the core subjects. We can't splinter ourselves into all these different things. You know, it's an extra burden on teachers, an extra burden on parents, and it contributes to this financial disparity we're seeing.
What's your take on school choice?
I'm 100% in favor of school choice. I think that a parent should have the ultimate right to send their child to a private school, a religious school, a charter school, a magnet school like Bergen Tech, or a public school. I think that we should not be, and this is especially in the case of a city like Newark, for example, your zip code should not determine your quality of education. And in the current formula we have, if your tax dollars are going to the Newark public school and it's not working well, you have no option to send your kid to a school where they may fit better, they may have more interest in the subject, or may be a better performing school. And you're seeing disparities in education, in achievement, in success in life, because frankly, the powers that be would rather you stay local, would rather not give you the option to choose. What are your thoughts?
Why? It just seems so logical. Why is it not being implemented? I mean, we see other states that have school choice. You see Florida has school choice. I believe maybe Georgia has it. Not too sure. But why don't we allow this to happen in New Jersey when everyone touts that, oh, we're for the kids, we want our kids and our students to be successful, yet we're not giving them the tools or the opportunities to do so, to become a successful individual when they graduate?
If I knew that, maybe I'd be the governor.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. And I'm sure, I never want to sit here and be one-sided about the way that we feel. I'm sure there's an alternate side to this. I can't see it. If somebody would like to come on the show and explain it to us, I'm willing to listen. I'm more than willing.
I'm willing to listen too. But you know what? I attended a conference end of last year, I believe, or last year. And it was on education, about education. And you know how much on average, New Jersey spends per student?
Give it to me.
It's like $21,000.
Wow.
$21,000. $21,000. So I know that's much more than a majority of other states per student. And where is it all going? If we're spending that much, we should have, everyone should be like the best and brightest in New Jersey, you know, like, and don't get me wrong, there's so many smart kids out there. But it breaks my heart when I see some of these students aren't giving the opportunity to explore and to really go after something that they want because of where they live, or just because funds are being used in inappropriate ways. You know, there are a lot of places where athletics gets so much funding. And look, sports is great. Sports are great to build teamwork and all those types of things. But how many Division I, NCAA, like professional athletes are we graduating from schools? It's a very low percentage across the nation. So I feel that some of the funds taxpayer funds are not being used wisely.
Absolutely. And look, this is the fundamental problem. You can't just throw money at something and expect it to be better.
Do you think underperforming schools should be getting more money?
No, we've been giving them more money and they've just continued to underperform.
So should we give money to schools that are performing?
I think you should give money to schools that need the money, right? Okay. You know, when you take a school like Bergen Tech or Bergen Academies, for example, they do get an endowment and they're performing well. Don't touch it.
Right.
They have the money they need and they're working well. And you take a school like the Newark school system, which is $1 billion of outside funding, and they're not performing well. So you can't continue to shovel money onto it and expect that it's going to work any better. So you need to get down there.
There's no accountability, right?
Right.
That's the problem. I think there's no... You know, if someone in the workforce in corporate America performs badly, they get a review, right? It's like an annual review and say, you could have done this better, you did this poorly, or whatever. Maybe we'll give you another chance. Maybe we'll teach you how to become better, give you more resources to be better, but we'll stay on top of you. We'll track you and try to understand. I don't think that's happening in public education. When you've got Newark they're getting $1 billion. Didn't they get money from like Facebook too, like a couple of years ago or whatever? Was that part of the $1 billion? They got like hundreds of $millions, you know? And it's like, when you have all this money, where is it going? I think that's my mantra is follow the money. Where is the money going? And obviously Newark is not performing well. So I'm kind of torn in the sense of, yes, we need to provide money to schools that need it, but there needs to be some sort of accountability system in place to be like, hey, look, an outsider from not in the Newark public schools comes in and does a Doge, right? Does an audit of what's going on. And not just a fiscal audit, but where is this, how is this money being translated into higher performance for our students to make them successful?
Right. And I think, school choice is a big part of that. Private schools, they compete with each other. If they don't have good standards, the money goes away. When you force a parent, because this is really about parents and children, if you force a parent to send their child to a school that underperforms, you don't get the option to leave, the school has no incentive to do better, right? And you put the teachers in a bad position, you put the staff on the ground in a bad position, because if the administration says, well, I mean, we're all doing fine, and superintendent is one of the best paying jobs in the state of New Jersey.
100%. I mean, sometimes I thought to myself, maybe I should go back to school and get a master's in teaching or something, and go into that field, because they're getting a tremendous amount of money, and the goal for most teachers, I believe, is to get on tenure, right? So that's a guarantee. And the salaries that are being paid and the healthcare benefits that they're receiving are tremendous. Tremendous. And
it's even bigger. You have your superintendent making so much money, but in many cases you have teachers, living barely hand to mouth in some of these districts.
Well, in the beginning when they get in, they don't get paid a lot, but over time they do. One statistic that came to my attention, because we're trying to understand the budget for the school, is that healthcare costs are going up. So in our district, last 2 years, it's up 30%. A teacher who has a family, the average cost of health insurance for that person, that family, is $40,000. That's how much we're spending, $40,000 plus. I don't know about you, but for me as a family, I don't have the ability to spend, nor do I spend $40,000. I think there's something wrong there. But all this money that's going to these salaries and health benefits, all these types of things, is I think one thing that's killing us. But here, we've talked a lot about education. I think what's related to education is also pensions, right? Because public employees, they get pensions, right? It's $7.2 billion has been allocated for the budget, but we have a $6.3 billion surplus. What's the argument of having that surplus?
First thing I'm going to say is, if you are promised a pension, you should be paid out your pension, 100%. But going forward with new hires and as people retire, we need to be able to reform the pension system in New Jersey. It's bankrupting the state. And, I've said it, and you're hearing a lot of other people say it. Cost of living adjustments are important. Paying out pensions we promised to pay are important. But it seems like every day we're one step away from financial crisis and still running a massive surplus. But
we need to have this money so we can pay out the pensions later, Oscar. I mean, that's why we need to have, a $6.3 billion surplus and tax the taxpayers more to get $7.2 billion.
I'm always a firm believer that the government is going to be much less useful with your money than you're going to be, right?
When it's not your money, right?
Yeah. The government will spend your money like it's your money, not like it's their money. And I think there's so many inefficiencies. And that's why you look at something like auditing or something like government and efficiency reforms, and it's necessary.
Do you think part of the surplus should be returned back to taxpayers, or do you think it should be allocated to something else?
I think if we have such a massive surplus that we're returning it to taxpayers, we should just lower people's taxes.
Okay. That being said, then we would still have that surplus. Where do you think we should apply that to? Like, what would be some smart ways to implement or use that money?
It's a good question. It's one I'd have to do more research on. I think just off the top of my head, we have failing roadways in this state. We have NJ Transit, which clearly isn't solvent, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. I think sitting in a pile somewhere is the least effective use of our money.
Well, look, you brought up New Jersey Transit. Thank you for bringing that up, because you know what? They're allocating $815 million to New Jersey Transit. I don't know if you've ridden New Jersey Transit recently, or I haven't personally, but they've been getting a lot of money, and they just recently built a new headquarters, I believe. Spent how much? Like $1 billion or something like that?
I will tell you my favorite anecdote about New Jersey Transit. In Ridgefield Park in 2020, New Jersey Transit seized the ground of a commercial development that was going to bring millions and millions of tax revenue. They seized it. We fought them. We lost. They took $1.7 million off of our tax rolls to build a new electric vehicle garage. The year is now 2025. It's 5 years later, and it is the world's most expensive pile of dirt. And it's killing small towns. And again, this is what happens when you throw more money at NJ Transit without fundamentally understanding the problem. The money goes, they'll pick something up, they won't touch it, and then a couple of years later, they're like, well, we're insolvent again. It's bad leadership, plain and simple.
I mean, we see this in a lot of places. I mean, the first thing that comes into mind is like the U.S. Postal Service, where it's run in deficit every single year for the past 20 or 30 years. Has service gotten better? Postage rates have gone up. How is it possible? Because in real life, in business, if you're in deficit for 1 year, you'll go out of business, basically. How are these organizations, New Jersey Transit, how do they stay alive?
If you can't hack it, don't hack it. Pass the torch. If New Jersey Transit isn't solvent, you either pick up the slack, you change the management, or you privatize it. Look, I think that there are some services the government needs to facilitate, right? But I also think the government is very, very bad at facilitating services. Again, it's not their money. They don't spend it right. What was it? In California, $50 billion to end homelessness. $15 billion later, there's more homeless people than there were before. No new beds were built. The government's bad with money. And I think that the private sector is much more willing and much more able. And I'm sure, you have some thoughts on that as a small business owner.
Hey, look, I think competition is very important in a society that we live, because when you have competition, it'll weed out the poor performers. I know that's kind of mean to say, but that's just the reality of life. And that's what pushes people like myself and other people who run businesses to be better, to perfect our craft, to become the leaders in our field. It's that yearning to do it. And when we don't have opportunities to compete, I think that leads to complacency. That leads to laziness. When you don't have to go into work or go in maybe 2 times a week, and now you're ordered, when in reality, that's what you should be doing, going to work 5 times a week, and you're complaining about it, I think there's a problem.
So just so I understand, you were 100% in favor of back to work on day one.
I'm 1,000%. Hey, you have a job, get out of your house, get out of your pajamas, dress up, go to work, do your damn job. That's what you're getting paid for.
Look, I will tell you, I was in high school during COVID, and we were doing remote schoolwork. Some of us were. I personally was not. And this is the problem, right? When you're able to sit at home and I knew people, and it was so funny. You would be in a 9 a.m. Zoom class, and you would hear snoring 20 minutes in. People would log in, lay in bed, fall right back asleep. Yeah. This is the problem,
It doesn't work.
And I completely sympathize with the employee that wants that experience. But at the end of the day, we have a fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers. I'm not hiring you for charity. I'm hiring you to do a job.
Yeah, do your job. And I think, what's funny is, you and I, we watch the news and we see right now nationally, because of Doge, there's people protesting. Sometimes you see people protesting even locally here. There was a protest in front of a Tesla dealership in my town. And it's like, I don't understand. Why are you protesting someone who's trying to find inefficiencies and waste and trying to diminish that waste and diminish your burden as a taxpayer? Like, why are you against that? Do you know why?
It's a tremendous question. Look, I think it has a lot to do with what news channel you watch, which is all I'll say on that.
Hey, look, I think there's a lot of things that are going on. I think we talked about a lot, of stuff that we feel is going in the wrong direction, and we have to deal with it for this year. Can we change? That's the biggest issue. I mean, you're on the street, so I want to pick your brain a little bit before we end this podcast. What do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear is going on with regards to the governor candidates on the Republican side? I do want to go into the local level candidates, and I think we'll speak to that. Maybe we'll have some guests on future episodes. But what's your take right now? I mean, you know the pulse. Give us an update.
Look, on the Republican side, I think everyone's going to be working as hard as possible. But I would not be surprised to see the race thin significantly after filing day. I mean, you have a lot of what I'll affectionately refer to as third wheel candidates who maybe won't make it to 2,500 signatures. It's a struggle. And on the ground, I'm seeing our assembly candidates, our local candidates, everyone is struggling to get the new signature amount. And, what I'll say on that is you're going to be in for probably some surprises if I had to wager. And obviously some not so surprising surprises. There are some candidates who I think I'm pretty confident won't make the ballot.
Okay. Look, I think I want to continue to hear updates from you. So that's my expectation of you. I'm putting a little pressure on you. But because you're on the street and you know what the heartbeat and what's going on, I'm going to rely, and a lot of us are going to rely on your expertise. So get ready to shine in future episodes. But I think we'll call it a day for this episode. I think we went and explored on a lot of different things. But stay tuned, everyone, because we're going to have some interesting people on future episodes that we're going to interview. Candidates, current existing officials who are serving in their communities, just to sit and talk about and pick their brain on what's going on locally. Because the real reason why we're doing this podcast is to educate you guys and to educate ourselves. I don't know that much about politics, not like Oscar here. He knows a lot. So I learn every single time I talk to him about what's going on. I'm doing my research. You see here, I'm looking into, I'm not a accountant per se, but I'm looking into the numbers because the numbers tell the truth. I hope that this inspires you also to dig a little deeper, because the future of our state depends on who we elect into office. We won't get the best candidates. There's no perfect candidate. There's going to be problems everywhere you see. But if we can get someone that we can rely on, if in the governorship role, in the legislature, then there's hope. There's hope, right? You'd agree with me, Oscar.
Absolutely.
And that's where we need to start. So if you haven't already, subscribe to us, tell your friends, comment. We love to interact with you in the comment section. Tell us, what are your concerns? What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? And give us some ideas. If you know people who you think that could be on the podcast and you can introduce them to us, hey, feel free, reach out to us. We'll definitely like to talk to them and hear their input and get their ideas and what they feel is the direct direction that we need to go into. There's so many things we can talk about New Jersey. The point for this podcast is to make them apparent to you so you can continue the discussion with your community, your friends, and hopefully we'll get a greater turnout and a really great answer this November. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to us. We'll see you next time.